video here of the 15 acres at the Mule Shoe Project, which is tracks 1 and 2. They're adjacent to one another. And this is the property that does contain, excuse me, the old house or cabin or homestead or whatever you want to call it. So let's hop in here and have a look at this. I guess first we'll quickly zoom out. I know the labels get messy when we zoom out on MapRight, but we'll be zooming back in a moment here. There we go. So the shaded area that you see, that's the Mule Shoe Conservation Area. It's a total of close to 3,000 acres. It's about 2,800 acres total of land that's it's public land. It's a state-run conservation department. So it's generally open for hunting. They've got some cool camping areas. They've got actually a couple ponds for fishing. We haven't found those yet, but we've heard about them. And then with all that, you've got over a mile of the Little Niangua River that runs right through the conservation area. So you've got that for swimming, fishing, kayaking, canoeing, all that good stuff. The Little Niangua is a gorgeous river. It's generally very clear, which makes it super nice for swimming. Some beautiful gravel bars. I mean, it's just really cool to have that right there. This property itself is is very close to the actual conservation area. In fact, if we zoom in a bit here, so there are about 18 tracks at the Mule Shoe Project. As we mentioned earlier, this is tracts 1 and 2. They're being sold together, so they're up here at the northwest corner of the little development, and then directly to the south, less than a quarter mile, you've actually got the conservation area. So that I mean, you can go down the road just a few hundred yards from the property and be in the conservation area. And then the county road goes down, cuts across. You've got different access points to the river and to the trails and whatnot within a conservation area. So it's super cool. You can have your own private acreage, and obviously you can hunt and build and explore on your private acreage. And you've got the option of going into the conservation area as well. So if you have a big group of family and friends maybe out to hunt or hang out, it's pretty neat to have a couple thousand acres 30 seconds away where you can go and explore and play in the river and fish and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's zoom in and we'll look at these specific tracts. Okay. So I don't recall if we mentioned it, but we're using the MapRight interactive map. You'll see a similar map within the listing page for these tracts, or this property, I guess I should say. It might not have all the labels as far as showing the driveway and whatnot, but it should show the different tracts. And again, this is tract 1 and 2. When this was split up, they split it up into the 18 tracts, and then as they were getting ready, getting the videos and whatnot, it just seemed really apparent that tracts 1 and 2 went together very nicely. So they decided right off the bat to go ahead and sell those together. Tract 1 being about 5 acres, tract 2 being about 10 acres. So with the complete package, you actually have about 15 acres. And let's see if we can do this here. Since we're on kind of the master map, I think we can make this a little easier and get rid of all that. And for ease of use, we'll kind of look at this as being essentially one tract. So now it's, as we look at it, essentially one tract, about 15 acres in size. The entire north side borders County Road 66, which is a gravel road, and the entire west side borders County Road 525. So you've got good access, exceptionally good access with actual county gravel road frontage along 2 entire sides of the property. The power line obviously runs to the little cabin. In addition to that, it runs across the entire north side of the property, just south of the county road, so it is physically on the property. As we mentioned, that there is power that it runs off of there and runs southerly to the little cabin, and there's actually a meter in place, meter base, I should say, and all that stuff. You can watch the ground videos to see that. But having it run along the north side as well gives you kind of an interesting option in that, say you decide to use the little structure, for a hunting cabin or whatnot, and you want to build your main home elsewhere on the property. Generally, if you were to build over here toward the east side, you can obviously get power because power is physically on the property. You could take it from the house, go easterly to the property, to the building site if you chose to build over here. But with that, you've also got the power line already physically on the entire north side of the property. So if you chose to build even on this extreme east side of the property, rather than having to run the power, 1,000 feet through the woods, you could potentially run it just a couple hundred feet off that county road. And in fact, we might have a, whoop, map rec gets a little funky when we turn the layers on and off, but what that yellow dash line is showing is the approximate location of the existing power line. So it's kind of a unique scenario where you've already got power running to the structure with the meter base and all that good stuff, but you've got the line along the entire north side. So almost no matter where you choose to build on this property, you've got fairly easy access to the power line, which is great. Okay, let's shut that power line off. Not literally, but, well, kind of. There we go. And it should shut off in a moment. As far as the topography on this property, generally what we see and what we've seen over the years or decades that we've been doing this, when you find a piece of land that has an existing structure, has an existing homestead or whatnot, whoever kind of put that into place and did that homestead probably picked about the prime spot that there was on the property. And that's pretty much what we're seeing here. I mean, as we look at this, the driveway comes in off the county road. It's essentially level all the way to the house. And then the house itself, and you can see the ground videos to get a better idea, but excuse me, there's a slight downward slope, and they've got the house on a large level area. They've got a big, beautiful yard with some cool stuff and some big, massive, what we would call massive hardwood trees. And then in addition to that, as you go easterly, the property slopes down, and you've actually got this small creek bed, which runs southerly to northerly across the property. And if we back up just a little bit for fun, we can see that within about a mile, it empties into the Little Niangua River. So that little creek has been running to some extent every time we've been out there, but we're quite sure that's going to be more of a seasonal creek, maybe call it a wet weather creek. It was clearly a creek bed that's been there a few hundred or a few thousand years. I mean, it's a gravel bottom creek bed for the most part. There's another little spur that comes in from the east and feeds into it. But likely it's not a year-round creek. So certainly don't plan on using that for a water source when you do build. On the plus side, there is a drilled well located at the old home or cabin. In fact, it's within the cabin, which we like to see because that generally, it's not exposed to the elements. No one tends to mess around with them when they're inside, and in this case it is. So it's within the kitchen in the cabin, and you can see that. We have no idea about the condition of it, but it appears to be intact. So that's a great bonus. We already mentioned power is physically at the cabin with a meter base on the pole. Looked to be a phone junction box out there on the cabin as well. So yeah, as far as obviously there's no city sewer, but there are a couple bathrooms in that cabin, so they had some kind of system. We didn't really explore what it was, but likely either a septic or maybe a lagoon on the east side of the house where it slopes down. Really, you're not going to run into to any specific septic regulations in Hickory County with a property this size. You can kind of do what you like as far as that goes. That being said, why don't we switch over to a topo map? And we probably should have done that while we were talking about the topography, but this will still be helpful. So essentially a crash course on topo maps. The lines you see are called contour lines, and they're showing the elevation change as you move around the property. On this specific map, the elevation change between any two contour lines is about 10 feet. The darkened lines don't have any special significance except that they make it easier to count from the low spot to the high spot. So instead of having to count 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, you can jump from dark line to dark line and know that that's a total elevation change of about 50 feet on this map. So as we look at the west side, with that, essentially on a topo map, when the lines are close, the property is steeper. When the lines are further apart, the property is flatter. So that's a super crash course. So as we look at this west side, just looking at the spacing on these lines, you can tell that it's quite a level area. In fact, the home site itself appears to be essentially on, I guess you could call it a knoll, but there's not much rise to it until you get to compared to the east side where it does drop. But you'll see that if you watch the ground video or the drone videos as you come in off the county road and go easterly, it's pretty darn level. I mean, this whole west side, as you get to about the middle of the property, it's sloping down. Certainly some steepness to that. Not at all what we would ever call a cliff or a bluff, but it certainly does slope down there. And then the lowest point is going to be, of course, the creek bed. Cross easterly over the creek bed, and it rises up again. On all these maps, in some area, you'll see where they've labeled the actual elevation for a specific line. That 926 is indicating that little triangle is 926, and that's the elevation above sea level, 926 feet. So what that's probably telling us is that this particular darkened line here is the 900 foot above sea level elevation line. And you can see, you can follow that around. Comes over to this side. So if we know that this is the 900 foot above sea level elevation line, we know this is sloping downwards. That puts this line over here toward the creek bed at about 850 feet. And then the base of the creek bed, 10 feet lower than that. So the lowest point is going to be, according to the map, about 840 feet above sea level. That's the lowest point on the property in the creek bed. Highest point, as we go westerly toward where the house is, we get to the 850 line. We can jump up to the 900 foot line, 910, 920. So the highest point, which would be the driveway and the yard and whatnot, is going to be about 920 feet above sea level. So it's pretty boring information for most people, but certainly probably good to know that if there's a crazy drastic change in weather patterns, and we don't have we don't have California or something like that in 20 years, we're still going to have this area because it's about 900 feet above sea level. So that's good news for that. Why don't we go back to the Google map? And obviously, you can check the Mule Shoe listing page. We've got another intro video where we zoom way out and look at the area and how it's close to Camdenton and close to Lake of the Ozarks and a little over an hour north of Springfield, which is the largest city in southern Missouri. So yeah, great location. We could look at the tree cover though while we're here. This is a Google-based map, and on MapRight, you can kind of play around and change the base maps like we did. We changed to a topo map. The Google-based maps are good because they often are the most clear. In this case, since this is a wintertime base map, it gives us the opportunity to get a good idea, or at least a rough idea, of the tree cover as far as hardwood trees versus cedar trees. Being a wintertime base map, the hardwood trees don't have their leaves. The cedar trees do have some greenery. Let's see if we can move that. Okay. So as we look at this, if you look toward the west side of the property, mostly hardwood trees from what this is indicating. As you go easterly from there, where it begins to slope down, that's where you're going to start to see those cedar trees. So once it begins to slope, you've got a mixture of cedar, being the darker green trees, and some hardwood trees, down to the creek bed. Going up the other side, we go from cedar and then back into more of a hardwood area on that far east side. And it's fun to just zoom in and out and play around with these maps. I mean, it's really pretty fantastic technology that we certainly didn't have 20 years ago when we had to do aerial photos from planes to look at properties from the air. So yeah, gorgeous tract. Seldom, if ever, do we have a property that has a structure like this. It almost does go without saying that the house is just maybe a bonus. It's sold as is. We have no idea about the condition, other than we know it's in terrible condition, as you can see from the ground video where we go through it. Could be useful as a hunting cabin, could be useful for storage. If you're just a super enterprising young person, maybe you could fix it up. That's something we would have looked at doing a couple decades ago when we had a lot more energy. But the bonus is you've got the prime site. I mean, there's a reason that someone picked this for a building site all those years ago, whenever it was built. And it was likely a building site before this structure was built on there. We see that all the time in the Ozarks and elsewhere. You might have a house that was constructed 10 years ago, but the building site itself carried over from generation to generation because at some point, 1700s, 1800s, someone said, this is a good place to build because we've got this view, we've got this access, we've got this level area, all that stuff. And that just carries over. A good building site is a good site, no matter what year it is. So you got the great site, you've got the power, phone, of course, county road access, beautiful mixture of timber. The drilled well is very likely a bonus. You'll have to check into that yourself to see what you can do with that, but you can kind of get a look at that when you watch the ground videos. It's within the kitchen by the power box is where we discovered the drilled well. I mean, just a lot of good stuff going on. 15 acres is an excellent size, and with that, you've got access into a couple thousand acres of additional land for hunting, camping, swimming, fishing, all that good stuff, which is 30 seconds from the property. So, pretty special tract. Mule Shoe Project, tracts 1 and 2, sold together, total of about 15 acres in size. If you have any questions, please let us know.